Welcome to Flesh and Pod, a flesh and blood podcast, breaking down weekly news and notes from the tournament scene, community drama, game strategy, and more. And now, here are your hosts, Derek and Logan.
Hello, and welcome to episode 143.
Wait a second.
Again?
You said before we started recording that, and I quote, if I get into anything, stop me.
No.
So I'm stopping you.
Okay. What am I getting into, Derek?
The show. You're doing the intro.
You know, we're supposed to get into that.
The show is part of anything, though, and I am a good follower of directions. You gave me directions, and I'm trying to make you proud right now.
You are every Six Sigma teacher's fucking prize pupil, and I'm so proud of you right now. But at any rate, welcome to episode 143 in a row of Flesh and Pod. My name is Logan. I am your host. With me, being a pain in my ass as per normal, Derek Oswald. Derek, did you do anything in Flesh and Blood?
I did not do, so I couldn't go to my armory. That's still that long running thing where unfortunately it's just on the one night that I'm busy. Listen, again, the moment it's not on a Wednesday and that's on a Tuesday, I will be there. But Wednesdays are booked for me, unfortunately. So I have been trying to prep for skirmish season. So it's just been, unfortunately, Talishar games on Arachne Solitary Confinement. I do think I have a list that I like. I think I've pretty much locked in what I'm going to play. I did not have one to play in this weekend. You and I were talking about that before we started recording. I only have one skirmish within 50 miles of me, and that's next weekend. And then I have a couple more that are technically within 100 miles of me. But I say technically because, as I was saying to you before we started recording, one of them is like an hour and a half away, and it's tomorrow on a Monday.
I have a Monday skirmish as well that I plan on attending. So
yeah, I do not plan on attending because I cannot get out of work and drive the hour and a half and get there before it begins, unfortunately. So that one is off the table. It's looking like I will only get to play in two total. The one that's closest to me next weekend and then one the following weekend is what it looks like. But
yeah, there was supposed to be one yesterday, but the store made a mistake and forgot to order the skirmish kit. And so that one's being moved to, I think, next weekend, which is fine. And there was one today, but I had two auction fantasy football drafts happening, which means I have an option. I can choose to play in a skirmish or pay attention to the $200 in entry fees I pay into these drafts every year. Kind of a no-brainer. So I ended up drafting. Full disclosure to our listeners, but you already know me, so this is nothing new. I've been drinking for the last 10 hours, give or take. So this might get a little sloppy at some points because I haven't stopped either. Because if I would have stopped drinking, I just would have fallen asleep and then not recorded this show. And then you would have been more mad. And I'm not here to make people mad. I'm here to give the people what they want.
all right. So did you overpay for McCaffrey or something?
No, I bid McCaffrey up really high to fuck somebody else.
Good.
They, on a $300 budget, they paid $121. And I felt like that kind of brutality was perfect. It's exactly what I was trying to get out of it. The actual math on Christian McCaffrey in a $300 league and his actual value for a healthy season is technically 145, if you believe it or not, for a PPR league. It's
PPR. Okay, that's
it's
different.
up there.
Okay,
but at the same time, it's like I decided to bail on McCaffrey I bailed at 110, and then there were two guys bidding up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna let it happen. Ended up at 121, but then I got Jonathan Taylor for 88, and he is usually a goal line monster, gets a decent amount of receptions, but is the way that offense works. So fine. But
he's a better Mo Williams.
a much better Mo Williams, like a much better Mo Williams. I think that Derrick Henry's actually just Mo Williams now, though. But
yeah, well, yeah, that might be true.
That might be fine, though. And so football heads will get all of this. But so the drafts, I think, went okay. I did fine. I still have 2 more to do, but those will be over the course of time. I will be playing in a skirmish literally on Monday in Nebraska because reasons. It's a 2-hour drive. Leave here. It's at 6. Leave here by 2:30. Have plenty of time. I work very early in the morning because I do have a team that I run in India. And so I try to make sure that they don't have to work the worst possible schedule because I actually care about humans every now and again. But so I will get to one tomorrow. I did play in a CC Armory because I had nothing better to do on Thursday. I just decided to play the Azalea deck pretty much out of the box for the Armory deck. It's not good. If anybody's wondering, it's not good. If you're going to play an out of the deck Armory box, play either the KO or the Bolton. The Bolton's surprisingly good. The Azalea, but it has Blood Root Pox in it, which is why I wanted to play it.
Yeah, I think that alone is a selling point. If you're if you're on the fence, Blood Root Pox,
pretty great,
is where it's at.
Yeah, that spell check just fucked him, just right in the head, just fucked him, and I'm here for it. I love a good Blood Root Pox. I'm just mad that the token doesn't say Blood Root because I want the token to match the card, but. Needless to say, we can lace with Blood Root. If only
we knew someone who could make you a custom token.
We do, but I'm already thinking about how to pay him a ton of money for something else. So,
that. I was thinking you could get an altar from Mara too.
That's an altar, and I've kind of grown past that. And I think that I'm an original art boy now.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I kind of like both still.
I do.
All
I'm
both. Saying is
I have Mara Ultras already. I do own Mara Ultras. So,
but in her defense, she does also do original stuff too. As somebody who owns her cool rune chant tokens and things like that she's done in the past.
They're pretty good.
So what I'm trying to get at is you have options. When I hear Blood Root Pox, though, I don't know why, but my brain immediately goes to the weirwood trees in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Right? Because they basically are trees that bleed. And so I just need one of those that's bubbling and poxy.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Kind of into it. All right. It's going to be a short docket today, but we will probably extend it to way past what it deserves to be because we're us.
And we're done.
Oh, we can go now? Was that permission?
No.
Oh. Podcast Daddy says I have to keep going, so I guess we keep going.
Yeah.
First off, we got Battle Hardened San Diego run by AGE, which I thought was beautiful. I thought it was really well done. Sam O'Byrne was on commentary because reasons. I mean, if you can have a Sam O'Byrne on commentary, why wouldn't you have a Sam O'Byrne on commentary? And wait, exit page. Okay, great. It was won by, and I shit you not, this is real. I watched it back twice to make sure it wasn't a psyop. It was won by MajiinBae.
So hear me out, though. This was a battle hardened. He only dodges it. Yeah, he only dodges it when it is one of the big ones, right? I feel like he has secretly done some Kano math, and he's figured out what the best return on investment for if I'm going to get living legend points, it needs to be where there's a big drop off in the prizing between first and second, but then in the larger events where you can still top 8 and get a legendary gold foil, he's I'm fine with taking second at those. I feel like he's done some head calculus on this.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. But either way, it was won by MajiinBae for kind of the first time ever on Kano over Brody Spurlock on Zen. If you go back and watch the match, it's pretty clinical. Majin, the turn that it ends is Majin sees the opening where Brody is only going to be able to prevent 2 damage on a 7 damage Aether Spindle. And his 5 cards he looks at are like Kindle, a X for 5, a Blazing, a Gaze the Ages, and then randoms that don't actually matter in all the calculus. So he's able to go through a loop that allows him to Talismanic Lens the Kindle into his hand, Kindle to draw the card, pitch to play the next thing off the top of his deck. Then his next Kano activation with 2 stacking was a second Blazing. So he has Blazing to go with it. And Brody's at like 22, which is not even remotely close to enough to live through this.
No, not if you're still going too, because you're gonna like resolve the Gaze, and you've already done the 5. So
the first Blazing, if I remember correct, was for 12.
Yeah.
So the second Blazing is for, at that point in time, 24, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, if he's already at 22, I think unless he's got like more that he can prevent, I think you only have to hit 8 for the first Blazing to like for sure guarantee, right? No, it wouldn't even be that. If he's already taken the 5 from the spindle, you'd only have to hit 7. So you only need 2 more damage. 7 on the first one, right?
Yep.
So because you'd have 2 damage and then 7 and then 14, so that's 23. Yeah,
yep, that's all that it needed. Yep. And so he got there and fucked him up good. So Brody kind of just put his hand down, was watching. He's like, "Yep, keep going. Yep. I'm dead. Okay,
and I'm done."
And quite the interesting top 8, honestly. So I know you talked about this a lot, but we had 2 Kanos because Kano's pretty well positioned. 3 Zens, which is under the over-under. 1 Prism, 1 Azalea, 1 Riptide. And I think those feel like healthy numbers to me. What do you think?
I think so. To be honest, even if, like, for me right now, and maybe it's just because of how strong Zen is, but for me right now, anytime I see any top 8 that's like onesie twosies and 3 or less Zens, I'm fine. That's kind of my barometer.
3.5. Yep, that's what we've talked about. Is the number is 3.5. If we are on the over, that's bad. If we're on the under, it's not great. If we're at 3, but 2s and 1s, totally fine. 3s, comfortable. Like, we're okay with it. If it's a non-Zen win, specifically. So here we see a Prism, an Azalea, and a Riptide, which, again, decks we expect. We expect Riptide to do well because they play with their food in so many matchups, but then they die to the really polarized ones. Azalea, if Azalea runs hot and can Red in the Ledger the shit out of Zens, they get to win. Prisms have a good gate into different places. I think that it's a well-built deck. I know that our buddy Dalen Mack was actually at this event for his first event back in forever. Like, it's been a while. And he played Prism. He's like, yeah, I'm rusty. I only came in 14th at X and 2 or whatever. And I'm like, you do realize that is better than the majority of people's best battle-hardened finish, right?
Yeah, but that's Dalen.
It's Dalen. And
I mean, I'll say this about Prism. I feel like Prism is the best deck right now when other decks do fair things. So what I'm trying to say is in any matchup, there are decks that can beat Prism, but they need to either bring their A game or have their big pop off or do their thing, right? Mm-hmm. Any time where there is like any sort of struggle, I think a good Prism player will just finish it off, right? So that's the way I've been thinking about Prism as of late. Prism will beat any deck doing fair things, and so you have to do something unfair. I can't think of a deck that does fair things that Prism doesn't just wow.
Well-built Kasai beats a Prism if you know what to do.
Sure, but I don't think that is doing fair things.
Kasai's the most fair. You're literally just attacking.
It's all Zen's doing is attacking. It's fair, right?
But again, Kasai's best turn is maybe attacking for like 20.
Maybe attacking for half your health.
Lucky. Zen's best turns are like 50 plus. That's unfair. I think Kasai is fair. Zen, not fair. I'm comfortable with this top 8. I think that this is good. I think it's healthy. I also love that Majin actually, got a boat out of this. He gets a ship. Well deserved. We've seen this guy playing in these types of events over and over and over and over again. And also Caleb is just a wonderful human being. So seeing him convert, I still believe everything's a psyop with Caleb, and he could have finished any number of these off if he'd chosen to. He tried to make it so Icelander wouldn't LL, but he did. Again, too many people were playing it, so he couldn't really tilt the scales, but here he gets a chance. And if anybody needs proof of this, remember that Caleb Van Patten, MajiinBae, was in the top 8 of a calling. And instead of playing his top 8 match, wanted to concede while he was playing Icelander to come to the steakhouse with us.
Yeah.
I just putting that out there.
I wouldn't believe this if he wasn't literally borrowing my phone to call Logan to ask the question.
Do you guys have room for one more at the steakhouse? Who is this? Caleb. Who? Caleb. Yeah. Who the fuck is Caleb? MajiinBae. Oh, shit. Oh. Aren't you in the top 8? Yeah, but if you have room, I'll just concede. We don't.
Yep.
But what?
Yeah,
I guess I'll go play then. Click. All right. Thanks, Caleb. Good talk. That was one of my favorite this interactions period ever. My phone was like, oh, it's Charmer. Hey. Hi, you're not Charmer. It's Caleb. Who?
That also might be the best thing that my phone was ever used for that involves calling anybody. Just ever.
That actually is believable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awkward, but believable. We also had a battle hardened happen in Osaka. Won by Yoshiki Mizutani on Zen. So, okay. Before we get the feathers too ruffled here, the top 8 was 2 KOs, a Reinar, Eugene C., who kind of Reinars a lot, knows what they're doing, 2 Zen, a Riptide, and a Victor. So we're under the Zen count. Very important. This is also, if you're going to say, what does it look like for Zen to convert in a top 8? This is almost how you draw it up. The new and the Victor are really the only hard matchups.
I was kind of saying the same thing. I was like, theoretically, Riptide can find game, but the lack of red in the ledger is like a real big issue there compared to Azalea. KO obviously can put out some big damage, but if they don't do it faster than Zen finding their pop-off turn, then they're just too far behind. Reinar, I think, has it even worse. Because even when they are trying to intimidate you and whatever, Zen just doesn't want to block anyway.
Right.
So it only matters when it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's got to feel
which
the
I
worst.
know doesn't make sense, but like that's
it's
literally
got to feel the worst for the Rhinar player when they're like, intimidate your hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't see the way that the matchups happened, but it's also just thinking about how the bracket could play out. If the new and the victor are on the same side, then the new probably cannibalizes the victor, and then as the Zen, you really only have one real worry, you know. And the problem with that is, as somebody who's played a decent amount of new, and after our the calling at US Nats and whatever, I was talking about on new who I thought my bad matchups were. Guess who one of them was? I said the ones that I was the most worried about were the hard defensive Enigma, Kano, and KO. And Rhinar is like a KO light. So when you look at this, if you're playing new, you're hoping you run into a bunch of Zens, and there are more brutes than there are Zens. So
yeah, I went because I had to do a little sleuthing to figure out who won and won what. And as I was looking, I saw Eugene C posting about playing Rhinar. He won his top 8 matchup, his quarterfinal matchup against, I believe, the Riptide, and then got high rolled by the Zen, his words. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, that tracks. You go, here's intimidate your hand, and here's 19 total damage. That's cute. Block with my hat, block with my feet, go get a chi, go get a tiger, Art of War, banish the tiger. 56. How many you gonna block with? All of them? Cool. You blocked maybe 13 at most.
Well, I mean, if you throw in armor, they kind of have a fridge, right? You could block like low 20s.
Yeah, you
with
could probably
between
block
cards.
18, 20.
If you 4-card block it and throw all 4 pieces of armor in there, like you could get in there, right?
Yeah, but then you're still taking 30-ish.
Yeah, that's fair.
And balance. It's Fox News. Yeah. This is that one rare instance where if Zen's ability put the card in hand, it would just be better for Rhinars and KOs because they could just block with the Scowling Flesh Bag to fucking intimidate it away.
Right.
Instead, it's just banished. So they can just do the thing anyway. It doesn't actually matter to them at all.
Yeah, I wonder. That's an interesting point because from a balance perspective, in that one rare instance against Brute, obviously they want it to go in your hand, but I think most
all of the
other
matchups
heroes,
no.
most other heroes probably don't, just because you don't want them to be able to arsenal it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
thing. Then they have another 6-card hand or whatever. That makes total sense. But as far as a Brute goes, it's just like, yeah, whatever. Would be way happier if we got to do this in a different way. But it is what it is. Again, I'm happy with this top 8. I think it's healthy. I am really wondering why in Asia Kano just kind of doesn't exist. That seems weird, but in the normal and the APAC top 8s, we don't see a whole lot of Kanos.
maybe they just know what Arcane Barrier is.
That could be.
I mean, I don't know. Like, that's just me making a joke, obviously. I mean, that's a fair thing.
Well, yeah.
I think that a lot of it just has to do with it's a specialist's deck. And if nobody really just like identifies with Kano or wants to do the thing, it's kind of that same thing where, like, not to say that we haven't seen Dash do well here in the US, but I think that the Pacific region as a whole has always loved Dash, whether it's, you know, the Australian folks, New Zealand, you see Dash do well, early APAC stuff, it starts doing well, right? So I think it's,
yeah, Dash
their Dash is our Kano is the best way I can put it.
Dash being on the precipice of living legend probably has more to do with APAC's events than a lot of other things. But I mean, it just obviously regional metas exist, And this is the West Coast where 3 of the best Kano players alive live. So it's not too surprising. I know that Peter Budensick was doing pretty well in this event, up and towards the top 8. I also know that like Alex Vore is on the West Coast or in that general area. He's in Phoenix. So you have a bunch of people in that area that are Kano aficionados, if nothing else. So you're in a region where Kano is not only well represented, it's well represented by high quality players. And that matters. It's my thought.
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of it. I'm going to stick with my original joke. They know what AB is.
Could be too. Are you going to Tampa? I guess I forgot to ask.
I wished I was, but I am not. I mean, unless I find like a dirt cheap flight last minute or something. But
because I will put you in my hotel room with zero reservations.
Yeah.
But you know that Dalen's going to be there, right?
I know, and that's a lot of people are going to be there, and I desperately want to go. I also had the really sad realization that I've been to a lot of Flesh and Blood events, and for whatever reason, I've never been to any of the world premiere ones.
Oh yeah, you need to do that then. You
and
should get
that is
flight.
100%. That is 100% my jam. The problem is twofold. It's partially the flight, because I have a lot of other travel expenses coming up later this year, and it's also partially the like the time off, right? It's either I take a very condensed weekend under the assumption that I'm not going to do well, or I do well and then have to take time off of work. And right now my leave time is more at a premium because, you know, you and I are from the United States and we don't have generous leave packages.
I mean, to get to leave at 12:30 p.m. and be there by 5 p.m., it's $178 round trip. That's all I'm saying. From Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Just gonna throw that out there. I got a lane to go.
Killing me.
I got Dagan with me. He's cosplaying. You should go. Keith will be there, and Dalen is staying with Keith. Jeffo has an Airbnb with a pool.
Yeah, that part doesn't matter to me.
Well, okay, fine.
I mean, I love Jeff. So the Jeff part is good. The pool part, I could care less.
But you could be in my room, no problem. Easy. Mm-hmm. The flight, you would actually, with that flight, you'd get there before I would.
Yeah.
And I just put you in the room. You can check in.
The problem is I would have to take time off. Like, again, that's the problem.
Okay. You think your job cares about you?
No, I think
I care about you.
So here's the thing. I know that they don't, which is exactly why it's a problem, because it's not like it's one of those like, hey, you don't have the time off, so you're just unpaid. If that was it, like, I would be fine. The problem is I have to deal with government agencies and I have to deal with union nonsense. And so if I take unpaid time off, I get punished in a number of ways. Like, it's not just, hey, you're just not paid for that. Like, there is a detriment. So it is to be avoided at all costs. It's
on a holiday week. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure you can finagle this. You just really need to take the Friday off, honestly. You can make this work otherwise.
If I had the Friday off, if I had the ability to take it, I would. But as it stands right now, all of the time that I have available is currently allotted to the family trip to Italy that I have already booked. And then the remaining time is to save potentially 2 days for Japan that I'm still trying to book. So it's one of those, like, do I want to go to Tampa more than Osaka right now?
So
right, like,
I am in the spot where I pretty much am convinced that Japan's not possible. Just because for me, the trip is close to 10K. And because I have to take my wife.
Yeah.
And she's going to want to do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I ran the numbers to make it a doable trip, it was exceedingly expensive.
So my situation possibly will change. The last time I talked to Sophie about it and we were gauging it, it did not seem like she was interested. I think she would have a good time, but she has a lot of reservations and anxiety about like large cities and being away from the kids that long and just a number of things. So if it is just me and I can use some points and just take the most like bargain basement economy thing, like I can potentially financially swing it. Again, the actual difficult part is my time for that one. For me right now, like my time is the limiting factor, which sucks, but it is what it is.
Yeah, for me, Tampa's booked. There is no not going to Tampa.
Well, don't say that.
Okay.
Let you find some wood and knock. Find someone to knock on it. As somebody, because I said, hey, I am going to Pro Tour LA. And then I was like, hey, I'm going to make it to Origins because I can just drive. And then after I couldn't just drive to Origins, I said, you know what? It's a good thing I'm flying to New Jersey because then I don't have to worry about problems when I'm driving. Okay. And then CrowdStrike happened. So you find wood right now, sir.
I knocked it already. My desk is solid wood.
You knock it twice.
Here's the thing. Origins, I offered to drive to Michigan and get you.
You would have been dead, though.
Fine. I would sacrifice that for you.
I know.
I think that... So, Tampa's a thing for me regardless, right? Like, I already booked it. I have a hotel. I have flight. Osaka... I have a week from where we're sitting right now. If I can't figure it out by then, we're done. Like, it's just not happening. And I've come to terms with that. I'm at peace with that. Like, I do understand that if it was just me, I could do this for under $2,000. But when you factor in the taking my wife with me and all the things that we should do to get the most out of the trip and everything else, it's between $7,000 and $10,000. And so it changes dramatically. And finding the ability to have that sort of capital on hand to do that is not impossible, but it's very difficult. Because even if I raise that amount of capital to say this is just a free, say, call it $10,000, there's also I now have this free $10,000. What else could I do with this? And that is another entire thing. So
no, I'm sorry. Like, I love you, buddy, but if I had like $10,000, is there a lot of other things I could do with it? Yeah, but is any of it like go to Japan?
Oh, no, I 100% am making the irresponsible decision. Don't get me wrong. I am not. If I have the option to be irresponsible, I am being irresponsible. But there is a responsible aspect too.
Sure.
And I understand it's over there. I just know that I will ignore it because that's what I do. But I don't make decisions with future Logan in mind. Are you fucking kidding? That asshole can fucking wallow and die. Instead, present Logan needs to have his gratification. Future Logan, suffer. He's a little bitch. We don't care about future Logan, so we make horrifyingly bad decisions that future Logan has to go and clean up. And yeah, I understand that's really unhealthy.
I'm in a different but similar boat where I went from like trying to do responsible things to all of my big money, I'm going to say purchases, but it's not really the right word for this because of what I'm about to follow this up with. All of my big money spending, I guess we'll put it that way, is lately geared towards experiences and travel and whatever. One, because I just think it's good to broaden your horizons, and it's been very good for me on a personal level. But two is there's the other part of me that grew up poor and was evicted, several times. I spent time homeless. We moved 16 times before I graduated, all of that. I've also adopted the mentality that you can't repo my experiences, right? Like, you can't evict me from my memories. So it's an investment that will never decay or degrade. And
you're not wrong.
That combined with when I talk about, the struggles of future Charmer, well, he's dead anyway.
Yeah,
so
fuck that guy.
It's whatever.
No, I understand completely. Moving on. We're going to talk about Rosetta spoilers. Now,
spoilers.
Yeah. To answer some questions before we get into these. First off, I am in my cups a little bit. We were not selected for a spoiler card. I am not mad about that. Just want to go ahead and put that out there. It's a more limited spoiler season with them doing the focus on having a lot of things open and available for people to open and experience new in Tampa. So like very few of the Majestics, none of the legendaries and the Fabled will be spoiled ahead of time. I think that's very cool. It also reduces the number of cards available for people, and I'm totally on board with that. So we did not get a
also. I also want to follow that up with, and I think this is 100% a good thing for the game, but Flesh and Blood for the past couple of expansions really now has hit a point where the people invested in the game, the people making content for the game, etc., is just larger than the available pool even before they shortened it.
Sure.
So
yep.
It's also a good problem to have.
Yep. And do I feel like personally we are in a deserving spot? Sure. We are one of the oldest, which isn't saying anything, podcasts in the space. We have the longest running streak that I know of with that is unbroken. While we're not the biggest show, we do have a very rabid and devout group of listeners that I wouldn't trade for the world. All of these things are true. However, I also understand that we are not necessarily, and we've been told this, the type of content that LSS wants to see. That being said, we just had Alex Watkins on last week. In a couple weeks, we'll have Joshua Scott on. It's not like LSS doesn't isn't kind to us. I don't want to, at no point in time should it sound like that. We are very grateful for everything that they do because, one, they make a game that we love. Two, they are community driven, regardless. They are community driven in what they do. And the third and most important thing is they are player driven. The bottom line of the company, and this might not be true, but this is what it feels like. The bottom line of LSS is secondary to the player experience. It has felt like that from day one. I don't feel like that's changed. However, I will point out that 10 days ago, I did send the content creators an address at LSS an email, and they never got back to me. So if anybody's listening, please fucking figure that out. Moving on. Derek, do you have anything to add to that little screed?
I would like you to know that Logan Peterson's opinions are his own and not those.
No, they really
representative
are those
and reflective of.
No, if anybody's
Pod
opinions,
as a whole.
If anybody's opinions are reflective of Flesh and Pod in a whole, it is mine. Like, let's be real here. And that did not, that, I mean, yes, they are, technically they are not. We are a 2-person show, and Derek is an equal partner in all of this. So they are not. Unless he shares the exact same opinion, they are not reflective of Flesh and Pod as a whole. Throw that out there.
I was mostly doing that on behalf of our lawyer, Jordan Kennedy.
No, he can fucking deal with it.
I'm just letting you know. Sometime, every now and then, not often, but every now and then I try to throw Jordan a bone. I feel bad for that guy.
Why?
You know what? I feel really bad. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell him I feel bad for @Jordan. And I'm going to put this in the Discord because that's his.
This son of a bitch lives a great life. Okay. Yep, you did do that in the Discord, as a matter of fact. Oh, okay. Well, all right. All right. We're going to talk about Rosetta spoilers. That's why we started with that. So we're actually going to cover the sigils. We really haven't done that yet, but because there is an important part of the sigils that effectively is tied to hero abilities, we're going to quick recap the heroes. Okay. Because there's a lot going on. So Florian, that's everybody's emo neighbor. The ability on Florian is if there are 8, this is adult. If there are 8 or more Earth cards in your Banish Zone, Florian gets if you would create 1 or more aura tokens. Instead, create that many +1 of each of these tokens. So aura tokens are embodiment of Earth, embodiment of lightning, rune chants, etc., etc., etc.
Technically spectral shields, right?
Technically spectral shields are also token auras.
I mean, I don't expect them to make them, but I'm just saying, we never know down the line.
Aurora, Shooting Star, again, the adult version, but they're the same. Once per turn instant, costs 2 resources. Create an embodiment of lightning token. Activate this only if you've played a lightning card this turn. Okay, very straightforward. Makes for some interesting turns, but very straightforward. Verdance, our Thorn of the Rose. Again, talking about the adult. If there are 8 or more Earth cards in your Banish Zone, Verdance gets whenever you gain health during your turn, important, you may deal 1 arcane damage to any opposing target. So that also includes allies, because you can target allies. The last one is Auxilio Constella Intelligence. Once per turn instant, discard an instant, draw a card. Very straightforward. The importance of that is because the sigils interact in very interesting ways. So we're going to start off with Sigil of Brilliance. It's the first one on the list. We're going to start with it. I would like to just go ahead and echo some sentiments from Charmer in the previous episode. These are all insanely good tattoos. Just putting that out there. So Sigil of Brilliance is a lightning wizard instant aura that costs 0. It's an Auxilio specialization. At the beginning of your action phase, destroy this. When this leaves the arena, draw a card. Simple, elegant. What does this do, Derek?
Well, it does a couple of things for Auxilio. The first, obviously, is that it allows you to play an instant, and this will enter play and allow you to, at the start of your next turn, get an extra card. But this is not necessarily the arsenal thing. So this is an incredible like turn 0 play, for example, if you're trying to set yourself up, or other setup plays, because we know that this is a wizard hero. Theoretically, if you don't want to wait for the card, you could also just discard it with the hero ability on Auxilio. So if you want it now, you could cycle it with that. The other bit, though, I know you mentioned the hero ability. So we know Volzar the Lightning Rod has been officially revealed.
Correct.
That, I think, is also worth noting. So that is meant to be Auxilio's token weapon. And we know that because it's a lightning wizard specialization, lightning wizard weapon, whatever, right? So we know it's for him. But specifically, that says once per turn as an instant, you can pay 1 resource to amp X, where X is the number of lightning cards you've played this turn. However, if you control an aura permanent with sigil in its name, this costs 1 resource less to activate, meaning you can do that for 0, assuming that you have a sigil that you have.
So there's
if you control one. So the thing here is you can before you do like any of your other wizard stuff with Acilio, right? If you want, you could use the Sigil of Brilliance. You could play it. That's a lightning card. Set yourself up for the future. But now you control a sigil, which means your Volzar, the lightning rod, is free to activate. And so if you want, you could also then play 1 or 2 other more lightning cards. Then use your lightning rod to amp for, let's say, 3, and for free, and then cast your spell. And that's assuming that that's just your standard 4-card hand. And in doing so, even though you didn't get to Arsenal, because of what Sigil of Brilliance does, when it comes back to you on the following turn, you'll get to draw a card off of that. I mean, this is just a really solid enabler that I think is going to be really versatile for Acilio. And it makes sense. It is a specialization, but the text on it looks simple, but I think that it is very significant just overall.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. The doing things such as it's a little expensive, but like a shock comet, a comet storm shock, because they read right to left. So your shock would be coming in for 4, and then followed by a 5 damage comet storm. That's 9. That's pretty good with no other effects. With the on the back end, with the Sigil of Brilliance drawing you a card at the beginning of the next turn, or the beginning of your action phase on your next turn. That's really strong. There's a lot of things to do here. So we already get to see from the first Sigil that we're talking about the power that these things have. Obviously, this is a build around. Like, this is what the heroes are designed to work with. I honestly think that the solution's pretty elegant, all things considered. That's just how I feel about it. The next one is Sigil of Sanctuary, which is 0 cost Earth instant aura. So Verdance or Florian can play it. It's 0 cost. It's a blue pitch. Arcane Shelter 1. If you would be dealt arcane damage, destroy this to prevent 1 of that. When this leaves the arena, create an embodiment of Earth token. To me, this is anywhere from a 0 for 2 to a 0 for 5, depending.
Yeah, depending on the hero, there's actually quite a lot. I guess I should say heroes, because it also depends on who you're playing against. What really strikes me about this is that this is a card that is very good against Runeblades, even though a Runeblade might ultimately want to play it as well, right? Florian could certainly run this, but the fact that this helps to provide damage prevention of both arcane variety and the traditional variety because of the embodiment of Earth, I think is strong. If you're playing Florian, right, the Arcane Shelter can be 1, and then if you've already got him activated, you'll create 2 embodiment of Earth tokens at that point. If you're playing against wizards and they're trying to, do combo things like we've seen where their damage scales, right? We were talking about the double blaze earlier. Preventing arcane from the first one is like preventing double the amount on the next one. Correct. So that's very relevant. The fact that this pitches for blue means it's still solid. The fact that it's an instant as well means that you can play it in response to something. You don't have to have it sit on the table. I mean, obviously, it's a good turn 0 play if you're just trying to cycle your hand, but you can kind of hold it even in your arsenal and then play it as an instant, right? This could be... What's cool about some of these instant sigils is they can also be CNC bait, right? Correct. You can arsenal it, wait for the Command and Conquer to come, and then it's not a defense reaction. So as an instant, I'll get rid of it and just not suffer the consequences from taking the damage of the CNC. So there's a lot of neat things, I think, with this one in particular. Yes, it's not a lot of raw damage prevention, but it's very versatile. Yep. And I think that's what stands out to me. And that's very relevant because we have a couple of other cards later that we're going to talk about outside of the sigils. And my feeling on them is kind of the same, where it's not raw numbers, but the versatility that I think really gives the value in my mind.
Yeah, the next one is kind of the counterpart to this with Sigil of Conductivity. It's the same card. It's a 0 cost, blue pitch, Arcane Shelter 1, lightning instant aura this time. When this leaves the arena, create an embodiment of lightning token. So this would be an ability to play this as your lightning card pitch if you are playing Aurora to make an embodiment of lightning. So your next attack gets go again and then have go again whenever this pops. That seems strong, especially in limited.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious to see how many physical attacks, if any, somebody like Acilio ends up running, because there's a chance the embodiment of lightning token is just irrelevant to him. But even if he weaves in a couple of physical attacks, I could also see this being played in a list like him because it's a lightning instant. And so again, as we start thinking about trying to turn on his weapon, it's a lightning instant, so it's going to increase the amp count, and it has sigil in the name, so it means you're going to be able to activate it for free. I think that we could see Acilio, at least in certain play patterns, almost look like a version of what Bullander played like.
Yeah, similar. Yeah, I can see that. Next one up is Sigil of the Arknight. So this is Runeblade. So this is playable by Aurora or Florian.
Or Viserai.
We're talking about Rosetta, but yes.
I know.
Or Vincent or Viserai. Sigil of the Arknight is a 0 cost blue pitch with go again, block 2. Runeblade action aura. At the beginning of your action phase, destroy this. When this leaves the arena, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an attack action card, put it into your hand. This is actually fucking bonkers.
Yeah, so this is, to me, this is a lot like Acilio's specialization. However, there is a bit of a give and a take here, right? Acilio's specialization is just guaranteeing to give you the card. And Acilio's specialization is a lightning sigil, so it's going to activate a bunch of his stuff, but it also can't block. Here, this is not an instant, but it is a non-attack action, and it has go again. So when you're playing the Runeblade, play pattern, being able to play a non-attack and do an attack is pretty relevant, and then potentially extend your hand next turn. Now, less of a guarantee, because if you hit one of your non-attacks, you might not draw it, but the fact that this is much like Acilio's specialization, turning on stuff for your play pattern and potentially extending your hand further, yeah, this feels very strong to me.
Yeah, this one seems like it is kind of an improved Tome of the Arknight, in that it costs 0. It's a non-attack action for when that matters, which is very important, same as Tome. But this is kind of not requiring the dual requirement of Tome. You just need an attack action on top, and there's a lot of ways to ensure that you have an attack action on top.
So I will also say one other thing that really stood out to me about this card. Usually Runeblades are not trying to go the distance, but if you want to talk about a card that is like an ideal potential suitor for pitch stacking as a Runeblade, this stands out to me because it is a blue pitch. And if you're pitch stacking and you pitch this and then you pitch an attack action, right?
You can set it up.
You can manipulate that. So you can set it up and you'll know. And that actually might be where it's the most relevant, right? Where you're going into the late stages of the game and you're going to have a smaller hand. So you might literally just like keep a 2-card hand where it's sigil and a card you plan on pitching to sigil, draw the card you need, do the thing, blah, 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 right?
No, 100%.
So this very much feels like it's good on its own, but could also be a really good like pitch stacking setup style card.
Yep. Next up in the Runeblade world, another blue pitch, 0 cost, Runeblade action aura go again, Sigil of Deadwood, which is, in my mind, the coolest looking sigil.
Yeah, you see Timothy Oliphant's face there, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't until now. Ugh. It's like a less aged Jared Leto. Weird. Hope he doesn't sue.
I mean, I was making a Deadwood joke, but
I'm making a Jared Leto joke now. So, okay, let's go to Deadwood really quick. That show is 100% gas. Mainly because the cast is fucking insane. Like, you have so many people just crushing minor roles like it's their goddamn job. Because it was their job, yeah. But it's so incredible to watch. It's one of the few shows, and I put 5 shows on this list. I'll even tell you what they are if you want to know. That are a 100% yearly rewatch of all their content. They are The Wire, Breaking Bad, Deadwood, Sopranos, and typically, although I would be okay skipping some years, and these are all shows that are over, there's no additional content. The other one is Rome. These are the shows I watch all the way through on a yearly basis, no matter what. Because they are just that fucking good. And Deadwood's pace will just shock you. Because you're like kind of used to some slower and plotting shows. Like I also usually weave like Boardwalk Empire in there, but there are some definite slogs in Boardwalk Empire. There are slogs in The Sopranos. There are no slogs in Breaking Bad, by the way. And there are no, like the slog in The Wire is season 5, but most people are just like, oh, it's a bad season. I just disagree. I think it's very good. You just have to like kind of understand the premises in real life of the first seasons. So Deadwood, the best selling point is if you are a massive fan of the word cocksucker.
Oh yeah.
This is a show for you because the cocksucker quotient in Deadwood is its own formula. You can just look it up. I mean, don't rule 34, look it up. Don't just look up Deadwood cocksucker quotient because that's probably not going to do you any good either. But people have run the math on how many times per minute that word is said, and it's astronomically high. But you kind of don't notice it. It just becomes weaved in as part of their vernacular. And it's really kind of disturbing because you realize that you've heard this same word over and over and over again to the point that you're just like, yeah, okay, you're just used to it now. That term, sure, it's over here. It's so disarming. And it's part of the reasons I just love the show. It's, if you haven't watched Deadwood, just go watch Deadwood. I guess that's where I'm going. But the card itself is a 0 cost blue pitch go again at the beginning of your action phase. Destroy this. When this leaves the arena, create a rune chant token. It's very down to earth, very simple. It plays very well with things like Swarming Gloomveil, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of boilerplate.
Yeah. I have no disagreements. It's not bad.
No.
It just doesn't have a lot of wow factor either. Yeah. I was trying to think about it when you were talking and
about cocksuckers.
I only think I have like one show that I do a true yearly rewatch on.
Which is it?
This is not going to come as a shock to you.
Clone Wars?
BoJack Horseman.
Horseman?
Yep.
Oh God, no wonder you're a depressive fucking mess. Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I can't
That's
rewatch.
the only one.
No.
There are a lot of shows that I watch big chunks of, but the only one that I think I watch start to finish, because once I start it, I have to go. It's BoJack Horseman.
That submarines me so hard. Like, I just can't do it. I try sometimes. I'm just like, nope. Mm-mm. Like, getting past the fact that the dog character's name is Mr. Peanut Butter is fine. I can get past that part. The fact that, like, my hardest crush in the world is Allison Brie, and she's voicing the secondary main character, who is fucking a horse at one point, I can also get past. A horse and a dog, nonetheless. The random Keith Olbermann as a talk show host, that's fine too. The insanely depressive moments that would send even the mentally healthiest individual over a fucking cliff to their doom. I can't do it yearly. Like, I can't even do it sometimes. Like, I'll queue up episodes. You know what I'm talking about when I talk about this, but there are episodes that cannot be queued up and you expect to be okay through them. And you know which ones I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, there's a few.
Because they don't have laugh points.
No.
They just have, I'm numb. I shouldn't feel numb. I need to ask somebody why I'm feeling numb.
Yeah, well,
you ask people why you're numb. That's why you defeat fucking therapists on a regular basis. I don't do that. I've never been to a therapist in my life. So
you're going to show up once and I'm going to say, what is this? A crossover episode?
Only if we show up to the same therapist at the same time. But then if you don't say that line, I'm going to be very disappointed.
Oh, I will definitely be saying it.
No, BoJack, no. Like,
I was thinking when you were talking, I was like, man, there's a lot of shows that I will do like a couple of seasons of, or certain seasons of, or ones or twos. But I was like, man, in the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years, there's only one show that I've watched start to finish at least once every year, and it's BoJack Horseman.
That's a lot. Like, it's like watching Euphoria once a year. Just don't. It's a very good show. It's still going, which is why I don't include it. And I usually watch it once a year, which is probably says a lot about me too. But it's a really difficult show. And I feel like I've just begun to scratch the surface on how good that show is. Because it is so insanely uncomfortable.
It doesn't have any right being as good as it is, because like when you think about the fact that the only reason the show probably got made in the first place was because Drake wanted to hit on a bunch of underage people, you're like, why is the writing so good then? But
he struck a chord in A minor.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, he was the executive producer and blah, blah, blah of that. So like once you see it and you see the content, you're like, oh yeah, this totally makes sense. And there are parts in the writing where I'm, with retrospect, you're like, oh yeah, this is totally him selling his agenda, if you will. Also
true. But if you never need to get past that, just go listen to Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar.
Sigil of temporal manipulation. Let's manipulate this show back on track.
We are way off track. Wizard, instant aura, 0 block. Blue pitch, 0 cost. At the beginning of your action phase, destroy this. When this leaves the arena, banish the top card of your deck, be Kano. Basically, it just says be Kano.
Yeah.
Like Kano would never play this because why would you?
Can already be Kano.
They just Kano with it. But other heroes, this makes sense. It definitely fills that kind of niche of, okay, I get it, but it's nothing to write home about in my mind.
This, again, kind of reminds me of the Acilio specialization in that theoretically it can help you extend your hand for the future. The biggest knock here is that it doesn't have the word lightning on it, so it's not helping turn on some of those other elemental specific things for him, but it does pitch for 3 as opposed to 2. It does banish the card as opposed to let you draw it, so you can't arsenal what you get. Right? There's trade-offs, but it's ultimately trying to do the same thing.
Kind of the same story with Sigil of Forethought, where it's 0 cost blue pitch, wizard instant aura, so 0 block. At the beginning of your action phase, destroy this. They all say that, by the way. When this leaves the arena, create a ponder token. Like, that's fine. Like, I would play this in limited and not worry and not think twice.
Yeah. And it's a common, so it makes total sense to do that.
Yep. But nothing to really write home about. Sigil of Cycles is the one that Derek hates the most. And again, all of these are 0 cost blue pitch auras. Some are instant, some aren't. This one's generic, which is kind of, interesting in and of itself. Mm-hmm. Go again, block 2. At the beginning of your action phase, destroy this. They all say that. When this leaves the arena, discard a card, then draw a card. So this is interesting for a number of reasons. One, this is just ready-made for brutes, which is kind of crazy.
Except it doesn't have the 6 attack power on it. Like,
no, instead you just get to choose to discard a card to draw a card to intimidate.
Yeah, I mean, there is that part. I don't know. I look at this and I keep thinking, like, man, there are some sneaky things that you can do as active player with your order of operations. Like, if you are in a Acilio, you could, have a sigil of, on their turn, right? You've got your sigil of temporal manipulation or his specialization or whatever. And then you play Sigil of Cycles, and then on their turn, you discard your stuff or you play them as instants, so you have no cards in hand. Sigil of Cycle pops, and then you draw a card, essentially, because you're going to discard nothing, and then get to draw a card, and then trigger the other things, and now suddenly you went from a 0-card hand to, you're cooking. So,
yeah, it is not a cost to discard the card. Right.
Yeah. I do think there are some sneaky things you can potentially do with this.
No, I agree. The last sigil, again a generic one, is Sigil of Fyendal. Has go again. When this leaves the arena, gain 1 health. So great limited. You just play it if you're playing. Definitely if you're playing Acilio. And it's just a simple 0 cost.
Verdance, I would say.
And probably Verdance too. It's a simple gain of health for 0. Otherwise, it's a blue pitch, so it enables shit. Blocks 2, not the end of the world. I think it's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. Now we get to go to what was revealed this weekend officially. I want to make sure I point that out because we saw what the weapons could be, but they're not in official channels yet, so I don't want to talk about them. The first one is Fruits of the Forest, which is a 3-cost block 2 Rainbow 7/6/5. That Earth action attack that also has just discard this to gain 2 health. No notes.
I really like this.
Just good.
I really like this. Like, on the one hand, yeah, you can look at it and say, hey, it only blocks for 2. One, if Arya taught me anything, your elemental stuff blocking for 2 is not usually an issue. If you need to, especially in limited, because this is a common, you can, throw this either as like, the red version is a big 7 attack.
It's a 3 for 7,
etc.
You
it's a
3 live for 7. 3 for 7s.
You love 3 for 7s in limited, but even the blue one, like, again, it's a blue pitch. But when I was saying earlier that the versatility is what stands out to me, this card and the card we're going to talk about after this as well, it's the versatility. Like, if you need to cover an on hit, you can still block with it. If it's turn 0 and you want to cycle some cards, you can just discard it. Even if it's not turn 0, if you're just trying to play with your opponent's math, I mean, we literally saw a huge play where somebody won a massive event off of a sigil, right? Gaining some health to stay alive. So having options to just be like, oh, by the way, I'm actually at 2 health higher than what you thought. Pretty relevant. But then when you go further, and again, you look at somebody like Verdance. Now, granted, you would have to discard this on your turn, But if she's active, this is also
2 damage.
Well,
Damage.
I think it's 1 damage, but it goes from, my point was, it goes from a 2 value to a 3 value. Because I think right now the big knock is it's either gain 2 health or you block 2 if you're thinking strictly defensive. But the minute that you're gaining 2 health and dealing 1, well, now it's a 3-point swing.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. So I'm a big fan of this card. I'm also, spoiler alert, a big fan of the next card we're going to talk about for similar reasons.
Yeah, it kind of gets around things like dominate or overpower, just because you get to block with a card, then discard it. So it's effectively still blocking. Now, for on hits, that doesn't matter so much. The next one does. But
The next one does.
The next one really does. But at the end of the day, this is at the, especially at the red and blue level in limited, it's a 3 for 7. And then it's a blue that still has utility. Like, no notes. Well played.
No notes.
All these are great. They're earth cards, so when whatever the banish functions are for Florian and Verdance, they trigger. This is everything you want. Just gonna throw that out there. So, like, if there is a card that like banishes and there aren't enough in the yard, you just would discard this to give you what you need, get the benefit, get the 2 health, and then banish what you need, and then you turn on abilities. So,
and then again, as far as like on the pitch side, if we're talking about like the blue one or whatever, again, it's an earth card, so it can power up your Channel the Millennium Tree if you're playing Verdance, for example. Just so much versatility. I really like the card.
Yeah, it's great. The next one is Trip the Light Fantastic, which is kind of the lightning version of this. So you have a 1-cost 5/4/3 rainbow. Block 2, same as the Fruits of the Forest. As an instant, is lightning action attack. As an instant, you can discard it to prevent the next 2 damage that will be dealt to you this turn. This is gas.
This is I liked the other one when I saw it, and I was very excited. This one is kind of on steroids, in my opinion. You don't get the offensive capabilities if you're pairing it with somebody like Verdance. So, like, that is one potential downside. Like I said, Verdance, when she's active, can turn those other ones into 3 value. But what you lack in that, you gain in additional value that's hard to computate because it's not numerical, right? It's qualitative, not quantitative. And what I mean by that is, as you so rightfully pointed out, this does stop on hits. This does help cover overpower, and it does help stop crush effects. And it does help stop arcane damage, which is going to be very relevant in this set and is also very relevant in our current meta anyway as well. And that value can even go well beyond 2, again, if you start talking about the scaling effects of how some of that arcane damage wants to go. This just feels very good to me, like almost no notes. The only notes I literally have about this card is that I just don't know what the name means. I don't know if you're supposed to be literally tripping the light and that's fantastic for you. I don't know if the guy on the art, his name is Trip, and his nickname is the Light Fantastic. Like,
are you
he's
not
Trip.
familiar with this colloquialism?
No, I've never heard this.
Are you serious?
I am a dumb Midwestern boy. I have no idea.
Trip the Light Fantastic is an actual phrase that is used, I believe it's for dancing. But
that's probably why I don't recognize it then. I was my last guess
to
when
dance
I was in
nimbly or lightly to music. It.
So my last guess in the rant was going to be that it was a professional wrestler that I was not aware of, because we do know that always makes its way into a set. But no, I have never heard the phrase.
100% a colloquialism, and I saw it and I'm like, oh, that's cute. I did not know that would go above your head though. Or below your chin.
It's probably in those soda states, and I'm a pop state. You know what I mean?
Okay, so 2 things. Sadly, I do know what you mean. And the other part of that is I don't think that that's it. I think that it's potentially an age gap thing, because it was or just being having some ear towards classical trainings for certain things like movies and potentially even dance or music. Little known fact, I was a ballroom dancer, so this
is why you've heard it.
Yeah, so this is not unusual. Plus, it's set in some older movies, so it's a phrase that is not foreign to me at all.
I don't remember hearing it in like Citizen Kane, so it's probably not the older movies that I've watched.
That's the BoJack Horseman of movies.
Yeah, it's very on brand for me. I don't know what you want from me, Logan.
God damn it.
Nothing I'm saying should surprise you.
You have one type. We figured that part out, I guess. Jesus Christ.
I commit to the bit.
That's not a bit anymore. It's just your fucking existence. God damn it, Derek. Is this what keeps you alive? Can you please tell me that this is what keeps you alive? Because then I'll feel good about the fact that I've been doing this thing for so long.
Yeah.
Well,
it's something like that.
All right. Well, I feel less numb. Anyway, God damn it. I don't even know what to do now. I'm so disarmed. I feel vulnerable. I feel naked. But when people, you can't even see my nipples. I need an adult. You're right. I do need an adult. Where's Elaine? At any rate, are you ready for listener questions? We got a couple.
I am.
We got some cornering to do. We did not corner last week.
Listen, nobody puts FAP in a corner.
Except for our listeners.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. First one is from Blaze Storm, valued member of the Patreon.
And community in general.
Oh yeah. Just a mensch, honestly.
Yeah.
Blaze Storm asks, you've mentioned Fortnite a few times now, made me wonder what your desert island video game is. So that concept is if you're stranded on a desert island and you only had one video game you're able to play because you inexplicably have a TV, electricity, and a console or a computer, what would it be?
All right. You're going to be very upset with me.
That's probably true.
Russian roulette.
At no point did I say you have a gun.
Okay. Fine.
It does say video game, which is Russian roulette is not a video game.
All right. Man, that's a tough call. I think some version of Civilization.
Yeah.
All the versions are like similar enough that I guess it kind of doesn't matter which one. But every time I pick it up, I feel like I lose like 6 months of my life. I am one more turn embodied.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
It's so funny because like I don't know that I would ever call it like a favorite of mine. I probably would never list it in like my top 10 games. It's not whatever. But if I'm just thinking about games that I have the most replayability, or it's the games that I have like the most hours in, the only games I think I have more hours in than that are ones where it's more about the community than the game, right? So like I don't want to pick like
a World of Warcraft
or yeah. Because like I'm not playing that, like that's not a knock on the game, but like I'm legitimately not playing that for like the game. I'm playing that for the friends.
I'll knock the game. It's fine.
Yeah.
I've devoted probably thousands of hours to World of Warcraft.
Oh, I know I've done that, and I haven't even been playing it for like a decade at this point. And I still had committed thousands of hours.
Since I raided. It's been probably it's been 10 years at least.
Yeah, the last time that I was doing like progression competitive-ish raiding was Cataclysm.
Mine was actually Frost. Would have been Ice Crown.
Yeah, so, okay, that was a good one.
That was a really good one. It's a good time to quit. Mine would probably be Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, because you can have so many trees you can take throughout the game that just keeps kind of giving you a new experience as you go. And then once I felt like I'd experienced the whole thing, I would just drown myself because I'm on a deserted island.
Hey, listen, if I can't have Russian roulette, then you can't have drowning yourself.
I can after I play the games.
Listen, it's funny you say that because my number 2, and like I said, I was going slowly based on like what would I probably spend the most hours on. The game after Civilization that I probably have the most hours on is Baldur's Gate 3, and that probably would have been my second pick.
That was my
for
other
very
thought.
Similar reasons.
My other thought was BG3 because right now
I've played through it a few times, and I have a thing open over here of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 new character ideas I want to play through at some point.
Yep. I have the first 2 playthroughs I did. I dodged the Adamantine Forge because I didn't want to deal with it.
Okay.
And so this time I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to do this whole bit of business. I know there's a boss at the end of it that wants to fuck my face. Mm-hmm. And so I go down there and I'm like, okay, I think I can burst this thing dead. That's untrue. You can't.
No, yeah, you can, actually. So you can. I know this because I've only done 2 playthroughs so far. And the first time I did my playthrough, I did not know about the trick, like the mechanic. So I spent probably 10 hours trying to do exactly what you're talking about. So here's the thing. I know it's possible. It just takes commitment.
I figured out that how it has to work. I discovered the trick on accident. And I still died. But I now have an idea of how this entire fight has to work. I still haven't done it. It's queued up. I'm probably 2 hours into figuring out the fight. But like, holy shit.
When I figured it out, mine was also by accident because I killed myself with it. And then I was like, oh.
That's what I did.
Yep. Okay.
I killed 3 characters. And so like the part that really bothered me is getting to it. I was just like, well, this doesn't make sense, but I guess I have to do this, and then I have to do this. This feels like cheating. And then so I did the whole thing and got to the forge, like beat the, got the ore, beat the, got to the forge, past the boss or past the elemental and all that shit. And I was like, God, I feel like I cheesed that. And I described it to somebody later and they're like, no, that's literally the only way to do it. It doesn't work if you don't do it that way. I'm like, that's a dick move. Like, end of story. That's a dick move.
There's a lot of, that's part of the reason that might be my other choice for a desert island game. There's a lot of things in that game that you can only do because you were like trying, like they reward creativity
they do.
Splendidly in that game.
Yeah.
And so I do appreciate that. I will also say, like, with that whole thing when you're going down into the area, I've only done 2 full playthroughs, but my first one, I totally messed that up because sometimes in the game, they tell you that something is time sensitive, but it's not like real time sensitive. Right. And that happens very early on in the game, like with the Druid Grove stuff and whatever. And so that trained me to think like, okay, they're saying it's time sensitive, but it's not like truly time sensitive. And then you get to that forge area and there's a couple of things that are truly time sensitive, where if you do like a long rest, stuff happens. And so I'll try to say this as spoiler free as possible. I did it the not so great way the first time. And so instead, when I went down, like half the people are dead. Because I didn't do the nice thing.
Yeah, that'll happen. Moving on. Next question is from Poxanus. All right, Comics Corner question. We're going to the corner, baby. The new X-Men, Scott's team. So we're talking about Cyclops, Beast, Juggernaut, Magic, Temper, Psylocke, and Quentin Quire. So Kid Omega. Run feels like a rehash of some old 2000s books, which is killing my enjoyment of it a bit. What are your thoughts on doing callbacks to older stories for a new generation? So we'll start with that question. I I was a lapsed comics fan specifically for X-Men in that era. So this is kind of new to me. I do understand the things it's rehashing. I also think it's pretty fucking funny. Like, I'm sorry, the concept of a juggernaut railgun in which the ammunition for the railgun is juggernaut is really fucking great. I'm in for this. I sold. Please do. I feel like they're doing an okay job as being the monster of the week comic book, which is what their run is designed to be. I think that they're doing fine. It's effectively like Buffy the Vampire Slayer version of X-Men.
I was going to say X-Files Men. Same
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's okay. Because we'll get more. I'm sorry, I forgot Magneto. Because they are doing some interesting things with Magneto as well. And all of this is going to build. So right now, pointing out that it's kind of doing some rehashing, I think is, well, fair. I don't believe that it is narratively important because we're in the process we're in the process of filtering to a payoff. And we haven't got to the payoff even yet. We're not even close. So when we get to the payoff, and yes, it's easier to see that through with like Uncanny. Or even Phoenix. I'll get to that in a bit. But right now, I'm okay with it. Because while you say older generation, you're pointing to the 2000s, I laugh at your childhood. Because older generation for me is like the Jim Lee, Chris Claremont reboot of like 1991. So go fuck yourself, child.
Yeah, if your comics don't have holograms on the front, get out of here.
If your comic books cost more than $1.25 cover price when you started buying them, get off my lawn. But in reality, like in all reality, it's my X-Men started really with the reboot with Uncanny being separate from X-Men. So we are talking the Jim Lee era and how incredible the blue and yellow split or blue and gold split was in that time frame. It was engaging. It even got to the point that I even remember back then when people were divided where they either preferred the gold team books or the blue team books.
I was a gold team guy.
Yeah, I'm a blue team dude. Like, yeah. And
Storm, Colossus, like
it's a great book. I'm not arguing.
Gold team is just where a lot of my heart was. So,
but Beast, Rogue, Gambit.
Yeah, you can miss me on all of those.
Really?
Yeah, if they never showed up in one of my X-Men books again, I would not miss them personally.
Gambit?
I do not like Gambit. I am actually very anti-Gambit.
My heart hurts right now. That is my favorite X character.
He's a lot of people's.
Adore Gambit.
My
favorite
not for me.
My favorite X-Men hero is Gambit. My favorite X character is Sinister by leaps and bounds. But really, is it because you like the boring ass shit that is Colossus?
First of all, I don't know how a Russian mobster can be boring. I don't know how Brother of Magic can be boring.
He's the brother of a compelling character. Congratulations.
Guy who's an actual martyr who tried to sacrifice himself to save mutant kind.
But whatever.
Yeah, whatever. So no, I do like Colossus. But no, for me, like the Gambit thing is like it was. I mean, it's one of a lot of things, really. I can only deal with him. I felt like, especially when I was falling in love with X-Men, that his only gimmick was like he has a thing for like women that he can't love.
But he's past that now.
Now, sure, but like it was 20 years of that, dude. Like it started with like, hey, I'm hanging out with Storm, but she's like underage because of, speaking of like rehashing old stories, how many times do we have to retell Storm's story? How many times do we have to revisit Phoenix stuff? How many times do we have to go back to Mutants Hate Us? I mean, if you want to talk about like rehashing, if you're not like somebody who's a fan of that, don't read an X title. Because there's no, and I love them, but there is no team on the planet that hits their old stories more often. House of M is like the perfect X story because all it is like, oh, by the way, we wrote ourselves into a corner, so we're going to reset everything. And then, like, if I'm being honest, and I don't hate it, but I kind of feel like that's what happened with some of the Krakoa stuff. So now it's just like, let's get back to our roots. So they just do that. But I don't hate it. For a
second. The best X story is Age of Apocalypse.
I don't know if that's my personal. I'll also say this though. I have very unpopular takes about some of my things. So I was also going to say when you talk about rehashing, I'm one of the people who loves the Ultimate Universe, and I liked a lot of the stuff they did. I do love
the Ultimate Universe,
and so when you're talking about things that are just revisiting for a newer generation. All the reasons I loved the Ultimate stuff, right? Because it was exactly that, and it helped modernize it. And you don't have to do time sliding, right? Like time sliding, if you're not familiar, is an actual thing in Marvel Comics where they talk about how certain events were so important in time that they actually like pull things closer to them, and they use it to explain weird phenomena. How like
Captain America looks only like he's 35 years old, or
I mean, you can blame that on Super Serum, but it's for the people outside him. It's Sharon Carter, right? Because it starts as like the niece, and then like the grandniece of Peggy, and then like the great grandniece or whatever, right? But it's always the same character, but they have to keep doing it because
it's all Agent 13.
The further in time we go, the farther away. Like you're always revisiting stuff, but in my opinion, I think that. There's X-Men books more than any revisit some of the same stories over and over again. And in many ways you kind of have to, because so much of their core identity is about being underprivileged, right? And almost an us versus them, or an us versus the world. And there's only so many ways you can do that.
How sad is that though? That the X-Men came into our lives or social consciousness in 1963. So we are in 60 plus years now of the X-Men. And they were originally a commentary on civil rights. That was 60 years ago, and it's still fucking relevant today. We're shit as a society.
Dude, next year, X-Men can start collecting Social Security. I just did the math on that. They turn 62 next year.
For free, and they can actually pull for their 401k without penalty. Yeah, that's true. God damn it. And we still are no better. Well, barely better, I should say. Second part of Pox's question, what is the dream pairing to write and illustrate a fab comic? That's rough. Do you have one?
I have one, yeah, for me.
Then go.
My initial knee jerk was for writing. I was like, well, it's got to be Gale. But then I thought about it for a bit, and I actually landed on something else.
Yeah, that's what I did too. I said Gale. I said Gale to start.
I said Gale to start, but then I started thinking about just like overall tone of the universe and how it has to cover kind of a wide breadth of different things. So what I personally landed on for me, my dream pairing would be Derek Robertson on the art, because he can do gritty and also more standard comic stuff
name the same way as you do.
Spells it, but when you think about like work he's done on The Boys versus Batman, he covers a wide breadth, right? And he's also not afraid to hit some of the like gory Riptide stuff. You know what I mean? Like you need someone who can do both. So I went with him for the artist. And then for the writer, for me, it would actually be Ed Brubaker.
That's pretty good. Don't hate Ed.
I can't, it's very hard for me to think of anything that he wrote that I don't love, but he also can do lighthearted and serious very well. He covers the gamut. And I could see like some of his like more spy, like subterfuge stuff, I think would work really well with the Pits. I that's where I landed. So yeah, Ed Brubaker and Derek Robinson would be my choices.
So to me, Flesh and Blood is a stylistic and violent universe. That is how I see Flesh and Blood. So my artist is Joe Madureira. If you've ever read Battle Chasers, he crushes fantasy art. Like, the dude is a fucking master. It is insane. And I just love it to death. For the writing, give me Garth Ennis. I think it's going to be violent. It's going to be over the top.
So I thought about Garth as well, and I don't disagree. It'll be violent and over the top. The problem was, and the reason that I was trying to land on somebody who is like kind of in the middle, that's, to me, Ed was like in between Gale and
Garth.
Ennis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
there's a scale because Malar is closer to the Ennis side of the scale. And then.
Yeah. There is a scale. But so ultimately what I was trying to figure out was like, I felt like Gale, for example, could write Dash and make her be
absolutely
awesome. But I have a hard time imagining Garth writing Dash. Does that make sense?
It
and
does.
Then there's like the other end of the spectrum as well, right? Where I was trying to think of like who can do, the Arachne.
Gale's not
who
writing
can do
the pits, right?
Right. So when I was trying to think of somebody who could cover like both ends, ultimately I was between a couple, but I landed on Ed because he, like I said, it's hard for me to think of anything he's written that I don't like.
Ed's a great choice. I am 100% not upset choosing Ed. I think Ed Brubaker is incredible. And I mean, I'm a giant Gail Simone stan too. Like, just straight up unapologetic. I think Gail Simone is absurdly good at writing comic books. I also feel that Gail's hand in writing comic books is more empathetic, I think, is the best way to put it. Like, if you do read Uncanny X-Men 1 from the new run, it will stir emotion in you. There is no avoiding it unless you are an inhuman piece of shit.
Or you watch a bunch of BoJack Horseman.
Or you watch a bunch of BoJack Horseman. It's the same thing.
Listen, it's not my fault. It's the sertraline.
At any rate. But so I took Garth because if I think of things like the monastery, even the war in Solana, if I think of the Savage Lands, if I think of Kasai's story, all of this is just Garth Ennis. And when when I think of the art, I think of, I need somebody who can pivot between all of these areas stylistically and maintain something ultra compelling. And to me, that's Joe Mad, because having read Battle Chasers, Age of Apocalypse storyline, Savage Wolverine, a lot of things, right? Joe Mad's art is hyper stylized. So you would just say, oh, this is the Flesh and Blood comic, because it would look different. And then the other edge of it is he can do all of these things. He's done steampunk looking stuff, so he would be fine writing Dash. He's done the art with the Great Civilization, so he would be able to do Solana. He's done violent and edgy shit, so he'd be able to do Savage Lands. He'd be able to do the Deathmatch Arena. He'd be able to do the Monastery. Like, there's nothing outside of his range when it comes to types of fantasy art we're looking at. So that's why Joe Mad is kind of where I'm at on artist. Writer is harder to me, because I do believe that I don't think that Garth Ennis could write metrics or could do it well. Right. And that's difficult. So if I'm going to pick somebody to like overarching, edit the entirety of Wraith, it's really difficult to pin that on Garth Ennis. I'd probably say Mark Silvestri as your editor, to be honest. But
I see as an editor.
Yeah, as an editor, right. And then leave most of the books to Ennis, and then filter in somebody that can handle like kind of the ethos or pathos of your metrics and your Solanas, right? But as is, if I'm going to pick 1 and 1, it's going to be Joe, Mad, and Garth.
Do you want to know who my backup to Ed Brubaker was?
Can I guess?
It's also somebody kind of in the middle spectrum. Yeah, I'm curious. I want to see if you can guess.
It's probably too prosaic, but Grant Morrison.
No. So like, I can understand why you would pick that, but no, it was not Grant Morrison, though I do like a lot of his stuff as well. Because again, of many of the things you were just saying, where you're like, well, you have to like do Demonastery and whatever. But I went with, for very similar reasons why I took whatever, like I could see Ed Brubaker still doing like a metrics. That was the hardest one for this one, but all of the other areas I think he'd be fine with. It was, Mignola.
Yeah. Okay. Like the way that Hellboy exists,
Solana,
and yeah,
right.
Okay.
I think he could do Demonastery. I could even see him doing Savage Lands, no problem. I could see him doing Pits, no problem. It was really just like the metrics one was what kept throwing me. I was like, I need, because it's not even just the metric stuff, but there's like some lightheartedness to that as well. And I just, yeah.
You have to be able to shift gears really fast, though.
I love you so much. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. You saw what I did there.
Yeah.
Moving on to a more serious question. Johnny Pastrami asks, do you guys wipe sitting or standing?
We've covered this before.
I mean, sitting, obviously.
Both.
I mean, I'm kind of a mono-sitting guy. But I also have an expectation of bidets.
Well, sure, but I wasn't counting that because then I'm not really thinking about like wiping. I'm thinking about washing.
Drying.
So if we're talking about
yeah.
So if I'm wiping, then it's both.
That's fair. Okay.
There's just some angles that are like hard to reach, and I want to be thorough. Like if I don't have access to a bidet, I want to be thorough. So you know, you do the business sitting down, and then you stand up, and you still do the second pass through to make sure you didn't.
Being
miss
thorough
anything.
is important. Yeah, absolutely. Last question is again from Blaze Storm, value member of the Patreon. For Assassin Corner, so this is more you.
Mm-hmm.
Is Shriek Razors really that bad? Paying 2 for reaction speed or Bido class Spider's Bite seems good, especially new while running Scale or / Nerve and Mistblade. You said no.
So I don't think Shriek Razors is that bad. It is, however, situational. The interesting bit is you use new in your example. I think new should only strictly be playing Arousing Wave because you can get 2 activations off of it. It's too good. And the fact that if you need to, you can Arsenal the Fang Strike. You have a lot more versatility.
Also says Arousing in the title.
That too. But also the other thing that you want to consider there is the only difference between the two, since that one also has the Battle Warning can block the 1, is Shriek Razors could potentially come back with silver. However, when I'm piloting new, I'm usually running both black tech and redback. I'm a big redback stan.
You are.
So
yeah.
The Shriek Razors are 3rd on the totem pole for anything I'm getting back with silver. So it's just not likely going to happen. I do, however, I run Shriek Razors when I play Arachne. And I do so because I value the block. And I found out a long time ago that when you're running Flick Knives, most people, like, they just don't let Flick Knives ever matter for any of the on hits. It only ever matters for, like, when you get them low anyway. And if they're not, like, all that matters is the threat, right? If they're not going to, they're going to respect the Flick Knives. They're not going to give you the opportunity to use it. So all that matters is the threat. And if all I care about is the threat, I would rather take a threat in the form of Shriek Razors that I can also still block with. And also, the other thing that I think sometimes people overlook, and it might matter more so in the near future, is when you're playing against mechanologists, having another battle-worn piece can be important, and Flick Knives is not battle-worn because of things like T-Bone. Right?
Yeah.
So I like Shriek Razors. I just don't think it should be played in new. That's Arousing Wave because it just checks more boxes. I do play it in Arachne And then Uzuri, it kind of depends. When I'm more mid-range Uzuri, I tend to play Shriek Razors because I still like having the versatility in the block. If I'm on a more aggressive list, I just run Flick Knives because honestly, at that point, most of the time, I care more about the damage than the flexibility.
Gotcha.
But it's better than people give it credit for. A lot of people just think it's unplayable, and I have definitely found uses for it.
That makes sense. All right, let's thank some patrons. How does that feel?
Feels good.
Feels good. All right. Let's get some thank yous out there. We'll start with our associate producers, Andy, Sindra, who will be in Tampa, Derek, Jacob, Kenny, and the Salty Sea Cat. Our executive producers on up, we have Blaze Storm, once again, valued member of the Patreon. Dom, friend of the show. Lance Goodthrust, friend of humanity. Matt Two Tokes, good friend, good dude. Love him to death. Pox on us, asking the real questions. You're good people, Pox. Vintox, now listed in Patreon as least valued member of the Patreon. So we're just going to go ahead and throw that out there. Papa Mike, Philip, Richard, and Sergeant Swanson. If you are interested in becoming a member of our Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/fleshandpod. There are links in the show notes, 6 tiers to choose from. Any of the paid tier gets you into Fap After Dark, which is our live show we do on Discord. Try to do it monthly. We did one last week. It was a lot of fun. Derek didn't show up. Greg didn't show up, but Brennan and I just kind of held on the fort. Elaine, we had Elaine Hammondtree story time for a solid half hour or so, which if you've never heard Elaine tell stories about her life, it's fucked up. We don't know how she's alive.
I am so incredibly sad that I missed it. You have no idea.
Holy shit. Because I heard it. Well, actually, I think I'd heard all of them at that point. But even then, it's just like every time you shake your goddamn head. Like, for fuck's sake, Elaine. If you do need to reach the show, you can reach us at fleshandpod@gmail.com. You can go ahead and send us a tweet on Twitter at FleshPod. You can also just join our Discord. That's the easiest way to do anything. You should like on YouTube and subscribe. You should like and subscribe on iTunes if you have that. And then, or Spotify. I don't know how any of this shit works. And then you should also just join our Discord, because that's where all the fucked up shenanigans happen, is in our Discord. There's a picture in our Discord of people shotgunning distilled pickle beers that have been sitting in 90-degree temperatures over the course of the day. These are not responsible decisions made by responsible adults, but still really fun. So you should join the Discord. It's free. It does. You don't have to be a member of the Patreon. You can just join it. Links in the show notes. Derek, where can they find you?
In the Discord. You should join
Best
it.
Place. Absolutely.
I mean, I'm around, like, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, other podcasts. Make sure you keep Twin Sons casual.
Keep Twin Sons casual. It's good representation.
But the Discord.
Yeah. If you need me specifically, I run all the socials. So everything I said prior, it's still me. If for some reason you're not comfortable, I'm just at Logan Peterson everywhere. I'm easy to find. Or getting inebriated, I guess. But yeah, like that's really all I got. Derek, you got anything else?
No, this has been fun, but I think we should get out of here before we hit the 2-hour mark. Let's actually do a short one.
Our quick episode.
Because we have Josh coming.
Oh, so Jesus Christ, do we ever? That's going to be such a fucked up day, because that is actually my birthday. And I turned 44 years old on that day. And the plan currently is to go top golfing with a bunch of people. So watching football and drinking at Top Golf. And then somehow maintaining enough sobriety to make it back here to do this.
I'm sorry, Josh.
Yeah, he's going to love it. It's going to be great. But it is also like, honest to God, can you think of a better birthday present than Josh Scott?
Oh, no.
Absolutely not.
No,
like
Josh.
That's a gift that keeps on giving. He is the herpes.
I wish I got Josh for my birthday.
Yeah, you should have worked on that. Would have
Should
been
have
better
worked
for
on
you.
that.
But that's not this week, obviously. So that's, I think, in 3 weeks. September 15th would be when we record it. So after the world premiere and pre-releases, so that we can discuss all the rulesy shit that is going to come up and give you plenty of time to ask questions. So we may have a guest somewhere in between then. We don't know. Difficult to say. Whatever's clever. Probably if we have a guest, it'd be next week. Because I'm not going to do guests on a Monday night recording, which was going to happen coming back from Tampa. But I got nothing else. Got anything else?
Yeah. No, I got nothing else. That's good for me.
I cannot believe that our short episode turned into an hour and 50 minutes of bullshit, but here we are.
I thought you were very optimistic.
I really need to curb my optimism. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
bad. You know
bad.
what helps me?
BoJack Horseman.
Binge watching.
Yeah.
BoJack Horseman.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week for 144. I'm going to binge watch some BoJack now, so good night. Bye.